Hello, thank you everyone for joining us today for the webinar with Hodges University. We're going to give it just a moment to let a few of the other attendees arrive, and we'll be starting shortly. Okay, we've got a number of attendees here already, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today for the second part of our two-parter with Hodges University, talking about their approach to course material strategy. Before we really dive in and get started, we have a poll for the audience that we want to go ahead with, so I am going to get that going here, and we really just want to get a sense of what you all are hoping to get out of the webinar, and what you feel are the real reasons that you're interested and attending today. So you can select as many as you want out of this list, but if you go ahead and respond, we'll get started. All right, the poll's been up for about a minute and we're at 70%, so I will go ahead and close this and let you all see some of the results there. So great, looks like a lot of folks are just interested in learning more about the implementing the digital first strategy, and then it looks like a couple more interest there on learning about peers, better ways to manage student costs, and then in inclusive access models in general. So that is great. We really appreciate you all taking a moment to respond. So we had a sense of who our audience is and what they're really hoping to get out of the webinar. With us today, we have Noah Lamb, who is the Director of Student Accounts and Auxiliary Services at Hodges University. And Noah gave a great presentation about the all-in model and the inclusive access program that they implemented at Hodges earlier last month. And so this is going to be the second part, talking more about results and whatnot. Just a quick background on Hodges University. They are a private nonprofit institution in Naples, Florida. They offer a variety of academic programs online and the Fort Myers and Naples campuses. They are a Southern Association of Colleges and Schools accredited institution. They offer associate's, bachelor's, and master's degrees and have approximately 2,000 undergraduate and graduate students, with a heavy focus with their programs geared toward the non-traditional student and the non-traditional learner. So to give you a quick overview of what we talked about on the first webinar, essentially Hodges University had a number of concerns related to course materials. The first being affordability. So they were concerned about the rising cost of tuition and the cost of course materials on top of that, as well as when you build in institutional fees on top of tuition. So they had a real concern about the amount that students were paying for their course materials every year, and we're looking for a solution to fix that problem. Next, there are students and faculty. They had some concerns about diversity and the acceptance of changes of a new program, bringing it in and getting it, ramping it up and getting it running for all the students. So they divided everything out into a few outcomes that they really wanted to focus on. Number one being affordability for the students, and number two, obviously, affordability for the institution. Making something more affordable for students doesn't really help much if it costs the institution in the long run. They also wanted to improve their digital adoption percentage, so adopting more materials that were digital-based, ebooks, things like that. They wanted to have access to materials on or before the first day of class for their students, so that their students were prepared on day one to begin their courses and work. They wanted to improve their direct publisher relationships that they had with the larger publishers. And then finally, they wanted to clean things up and have kind of a centralized way to, to look at all of the data that was coming in from a partner or a vendor, and be able to track, the performance of their strategy overall from a content perspective. So the solution that they went with was the all-in model, which is provided by EdMap. So the all-in model provides 100% of your students' course materials by the first day of class, typically saves up to 70% on the cost of course materials over the course of the year. So it's a pretty straightforward process. And we talked about this in the first webinar, so I'll just do a quick overview here. Really it starts with the faculty adoption. So the faculty adopt the books that they want. We then work with the institution and publishers to establish all-in digital pricing. So essentially it's securing those discounts, that up to 70% discount that we see with a lot of our partners. Next, we take a look at the course materials that need to be converted over that maybe aren't digital already, and we take a look at that by population and by program. Our program allows automated posting to the student account. So once we have the adoption and enrollment information, we're able to procure the books and then provide those to the student and automatically post to their student bursar account so that they can use their financial aid or other things to essentially pay for their books. They're getting them for that great price. They need to be able to pay for them. So we're able to post directly to that student account. And then finally, all of the students receive any of their digital materials immediately within their learning management system through an integration that EdMap performs with the school. So any digital materials are available immediately, and any print materials are shipped directly to the student's preferred mailing address. So obviously a lot of benefits. All of your students have their course materials by that first day of class. They're seeing that savings up to 70%. Flexible solution for increased revenue. So we don't mark up any content whatsoever at EdMap. We operate based off of essentially a per student fee for our platform and our services. So an institution can add in markup so that they can pay for operational costs, they can pay for whatever it may be if they are replacing a bookstore solution and they like having that revenue stream. Our model allows for that. And then improved operational efficiencies overall, and Noah's going to talk about that at length here momentarily. And then again, the DOE regulations are a big concern out there right now for all-inclusive programs, and EdMap is 100% compliant, and all of our partners are as well when they partner with us. So that's just a quick overview of the solution that they chose. So next I'm going to turn it over to Noah, and Noah is going to dive into the results. Now that they've had the program running since June of last year, he's going to talk about some of the results that they're seeing on campus from an administrative perspective and from a student perspective. So Noah, I'm going to be quiet now and let the experts speak. And just to let everyone know, We are going to open the line toward the end of the webinar for discussion. So if you have questions, you can certainly type them into the chat window. But if you want to hold on to them and ask them at the end, we'll be able to answer you directly. I'm going to unmute everyone's lines. So Noah, go ahead and take us away.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Today, I really wanted to discuss, I'm really glad we had that first poll that talked about some things that what everyone wanted to hear today, which one of those things was about kind of the process and, you know, our operational changes and things that were made like that. That's really what I want to discuss today, really the operational aspects, what we used to be doing, what we're now doing, the current process. I wanted to also discuss the feedback that we received. So from the very beginning, you know, feedback that I was getting from our faculty side, I was getting from our student side of things. I want to also discuss some performance indicators. As Nate said, you know, we actually started the implementation process in June, and so you know it took quite a while, but it was faster than what I expected, and there were a lot of moving parts in there. But now that we've gone through our first true semester live with EdMap, you know, I kind of want to discuss some of the performance indicators of, you know, what is happening, the positives of that. And finally, I want to discuss some of the things that, you know, moving forward into our summer term and our fall term, I really wanted to talk about a few of the things that we're looking at doing and we're currently in the process of working on with a strategic plan of, you know, making this an even better process, an even better thing for our students in the future. So, like I said, the first thing with the operational aspect, what we used to do with textbooks and course materials is very, very different from what we now do. So when you know, before EdMap was in the picture, our previous vendor, how it sort of worked, and I guess I'll talk about on a student side of things and an internal on a departmental level as well. So a student would register for their courses. They would register prior, of course, to the semester beginning. That may be a couple months prior to the semester beginning, and at that time is when everything would kind of start working with the internal processes. So they would register at that time. You know, they would also be speaking with student account services representatives, financial aid representatives, to really discuss, you know, what their financial aid, what the financial assistance they'll be receiving. And during that time, that packaging time, was when they would also see if they could, if they have any excess financial aid that they could potentially use for their books. And so our previous operations, it was really, everything was based on book vouchers. And I know that there's lots of institutions that use these. That's what our institution had used for years and years. To where, you know, if a student did have some funds left over within their financial aid, then they wanted to use those instead of getting that refund, we could put a book voucher on their account. So the book vouchers that usually involve this financial aid representative, they would be the ones that put that book voucher information into our SIS system, and at that point, you know, they would ask for the term that they're wanting to put that book voucher in for. They would ask for the amount that book voucher can be for, which a lot of times was an estimated cost. You know, and when we look at the performance indicators in a little while, you'll see the difference in that book voucher estimated cost compared to what we are now. But that cost could vary, and it really depended on if you're a part-time student or a full-time student, and it also depended on, you know, what excess funds you would have available for your financial aid. So after that happened, we then had an export process through our IT department, and so all of the information with the student's account and through our communications management system would show a student having a book voucher for that specific term. We had a process to where the process was automated, but it was only between 4 to 5 hours. So the process only ran, you know, every 4 or so hours, and that export was given to the vendor. At that time, there was information about it was pretty much kind of a basic export, I guess I would say, to where it would only have the student's information, like their student ID, their full name, things like that. But then at that point is when it usually took about 24 to 48 hours for a student to receive a confirmation email that they did have book voucher funds available to them that they could use within our storefront. So they received that email. At that point, they would then go into our storefront. They would have to look up their courses that they were registered for. They would have to make sure that the course materials that it's showing for that specific course were correct, that they did need those. And then they would go through the process of, pretty much a payment process. And if they had those voucher funds, it would ask them for that, and it would be that process. At that point, they would then have to enter in their physical address if there was any type of physical course materials that they had to use, and all of that was entered in, processed, and then they ended up receiving any of those physical items or electronic items if they were available for their courses. So that usually took quite a while, in my opinion, for a student, and we had some students that talked about how long of a process that was, how it was, again, based on an estimated pricing. So a student could potentially have $400 worth of textbook materials that they needed for that semester, but they only had enough funds for let's say 300. So there was a part of that where that they had to pay for that out of pocket. And at that time, we really had nothing within our SIS system that that $100 balance could be put back onto their student account, and then they could either make payments with us or different ways within our SIS system to then work with that additional balance that they had. They just had to pay that out of pocket. So like I said, the current process that we are now in is, it's a night and day difference. With our current process, again, the student registers, and then after that, first of all, they have a place where while they're registering, is the opt-out information. So, as Nate was saying, the DOE regulations, I know there's a lot of institutions that worry about the whole opt-out process and making sure that that is available to students. And so we do have that available during the registration process. They read through all of this information. It's very detailed information about the opting out of these, because you think about course material fees. We actually call them resource fees within our tuition and fee tables and everything. So when you're thinking about that, we discuss with them within this very detailed information about opting out, what that really means to them, how that works. It's only based on a semester basis, so they have to opt out every single semester if they want to. But we really give them more of the positives of staying opted in, and all of the features that staying opted in with the resource fees, the cost difference in that, we really give them all of that information. And so we'll talk about that a little bit as well, about what that has done, the amount of opt-outs that we have. But so after that process, that is when they register. The resource fees are tied with all of our course sections. So the resource fee is automatically placed on their account as well, unless they opt out, of course. But it's automatically placed on there. During that time, they're also speaking with the financial aid representative about their any financial aid they're getting. And so at that time, instead of doing an estimated cost for them when it comes to the course materials, the FA rep is really, they're able to go into the SIS system and know exactly what those resource fees are going to be for that semester. And so they're able to put that exact cost in there when they're packaging the students, when they're seeing if the student has any type of balance. And also with their student account side of things, they're able to review all that information as well. So instead of giving that student the estimated book cost for the semester, the exact cost is there. That's Only time that's going to change is if they register for an additional course, or they change courses potentially. But that's always there. So that's been a very nice feature as well. And, another thing, after all of that, our IT department, there is an automated export that is sent to EdMap, and that export is done every hour, at least once per hour, and which is much better time than 4 to 5 hours. And so every hour that's sent, the information given to EdMap has the student information, student ID, their name, the physical address that we have on file, and all of their course information. So all course sections that they're registered for that upcoming term is given in this export file. So within just a few minutes, I would say probably about 2 to 5 minutes at the most, an email is sent directly to the student's email account, and within that is something what I call, and I think what EdMap calls, the validation email. So what that is the student receives the email. Within here it says, you have registered for the upcoming term, and please click here to validate your course information and course materials. So they click on that. It's a direct link into our storefront, and it brings up all of the information specific to that student. So any courses that they have registered for that upcoming term are already put on there. So instead of the student having to go through and look for their course sections that they've registered for, make sure that the course materials are correct, and et cetera, it's literally all right there for them in a cart. It shows them the courses they're registered for. It shows the materials that they need that are required for that course. And all they're really doing is check marking that, yes, that is the correct course, that's the correct information, and then they're submitting. If there are things like physical course materials that they need for that semester, they go to another field where it's just making sure that the physical address that's on file, that's already uploaded into the system for them, is correct, and then that's when they will submit, and that's all they have to do. So our resource fees, it's including everything, and not just the course materials, but when you in the for the previous session, we discussed the print-on-demand option, and there are, I think, some institutions that probably have the student paying for those out of pocket, if the student wants it. But with Hodges University, we actually put that as a part of the resource fees. And so if there is a POD option available for the student, that is given to them at no additional cost other than their resource fee. So the efficiencies, as you can tell from what I've been discussing, it's so much quicker for our students. It's so much more efficient for them. They're really able to do all of this on a much quicker time frame, and not just that, but really sending all of this information, exporting it to EdMap is a much quicker process, much easier process in my opinion, and no one's really having to just monitor this at all times. Our previous vendor, our IT staff sort of had to audit the accuracy of the information that was being sent, because sometimes for some reason we had a few glitches to where not all of the information was being sent for a specific student. So we were really having to keep an eye on that. I will say with EdMap system, with the exports that we were doing, we've never had to do that. We've never had an issue with a student not being on the list or a student not being exported correctly. That's never been an issue, and that really helps my IT staff a lot when coming with all this automation and helping us out with that. So I also want to talk about the moving parts, and that's fine that you went on. But the moving parts of it was really, there's so many parts to that, and again, that includes the IT staff, that includes the student account services, student financial aid, the students, the faculty. There are many moving parts to this, but with EdMap, we've been able to really work together and, as a team, as a whole team. In previous vendor services and the previous vendor, there was a lack of communication, unfortunately, a lot of times, to where, the IT staff weren't always on the same page as maybe the bookstore staff. That is definitely not the case now, and we're really working as a team, and any problems that occur, anything that a student is needing, we're all working together and knowing what each other are doing. So now on to the feedback. With the feedback, there were some times where as soon as this started coming up and we started realizing, okay, I think this is this would be a good venture, and we need to discuss this more in detail. We started having some more faculty members a part of those discussions, and definitely we started having the deans and the program chairs in those discussions. And as I said last time, with any type of change, you sometimes get some feedback that's not so great, but then you get some feedback that's really great and really positive at the same time. So some of the negative feedback, I guess you could say, or reactions that we had was, well, how is this going to be easier on the faculty? How are they going to be able to, do this in an easier way than what currently is doing? Or are we just changing vendors for the heck of it, and this isn't going to help us out at all? Or some of them said, well, I don't really like the process that you're talking about. I don't really like this digital migration that you're wanting to go to, etc. And so we sort of had to address those very quickly, and we addressed them in the way of again talking about what we were needing to do for our students and to help them out. And so, then, so we started talking about those things, and they started coming around to to what needed to really happen within the institution. Some of the positive reactions was that, it was going to be an easier process, because once we got into the, nitty-gritty of what was going to happen and how the faculty were going to be sending their course information to us, and how these things are going to be electronic, they really started thinking, oh, this is going to take up much less of my time than what currently is happening. I'm going to be able to teach my students and do everything that I need to within the classroom, instead of worrying about the administrative side of things sometimes and having to create a spreadsheet and do all these things. So they really started looking at it positively in the way that the efficiency level of it. So that's my recommendation for the faculty and the staff side of things would be to make sure that you're very upfront with them in the beginning, and also sort of talk to them about the details that are going to be happening. Really go into detail with them and really talk to them about how this is going to be very positive, and not just for the student aspect, but really for on the administrative level as well. Because those things can really make a difference on on how the faculty, how the staff really perceive these type of changes. So talking about the student side, for the students, we did have a couple negative reactions, and most of those again came from the affordability aspect. I remember one student saying to me, "Well, you're just charging me an additional fee. How is this helping me out? You're just charging me more money than a previous semester." And so we really, again, started discussing with the students of how this is going to help them, and how, most of them are already paying for their course materials out of their own pocket, or they're paying for them through some financial aid funds. And so it wasn't really an additional fee. This was actually going to be helping them. This was actually going to be lowering costs for them and to them. And but that was about the only negative reactions was, oh, this is just another change. You're just wanting to get more money out of me. But after we really started discussing the reasons why we were doing this, the fact that we were able to reduce the cost of these course materials again, they started coming around to this new idea. And the positive, a lot of our students, as Nate stated, are non-traditional. They're a little bit older, so not every single one of them are really into doing everything online and doing everything electronically. But for the majority of our student population, that's what they like. They, and I'm sure for a lot of institutions on the phone today, there's a lot of students, they don't really want to talk to many people on the phone anymore. They want to do everything via email, or they just want to submit something online. And for our students that were in that mindset, this was a very positive thing for them. They didn't have to worry about having to look for all of their course material information now. It was directly sent to them. All they had to do is validate that it's correct, and there they go. They were very happy about that aspect. And when we started talking to them about the pricing and the fact that we were able to lower that significantly, that was another thing that they really liked. We got a lot of positive feedback about that as well. But for the recommendations for the student population, again, it's really the same as the faculty, in my opinion, but being very open and honest with them, giving them details, and really having an open conversation and communicating as much as you possibly can, because I said in the previous session that one thing I wish I would have done a little better was communicating more with our student population, because I think the more that you communicate, the more that you're doing possibly a couple open forums and things like that to where they can ask questions, the better, because they're going to be speaking to each other. They're going to be talking to each other within their classes, with on campus, eating, etc. And so the more that they're able to know exactly how the process is, how it's working, how it's benefiting them, it's really going to make a much more positive reaction and much more positive effect on the implementation. So, like I said, I want to discuss a couple of the performance indicators and really some of the things that we have learned throughout this past semester and now coming to the end of the semester. And one of those things was the average cost of course materials for the last few semesters. And prior to winter 2017, we were doing everything based on a book voucher, and we had a previous vendor. They were charging we were charging a little more, and it's as you can tell on this graph, it was very apparent how much they were paying. So an average book voucher that we would place on a student's account for a part-time student for the fall of 2015 was approximately $300. Full-time was $500. Within a year later, for fall 2016, we had to increase that to approximately $600 and an $800 cost and that was to place on the book voucher, because unfortunately, as we kept seeing these book vouchers, students were still having to pay out of pocket at least 85 to 90% of the time, when even if we were had a book voucher on their account. As you can tell for winter 17, which again was our first implementation going live with EdMap and really working directly with the publishers, working with discounts with EdMap and those publishers, we were able to get that cost down to, for a part-time, being approximately $200, and for a full-time being approximately $400 or so. And so, and again, that changed, and that's different compared to what program you're a part of. Again, if it's a PTA or something like that, it's going to be a little more expensive, but nothing like it was in previous semesters where we were a student was potentially paying $800 to $900 for their course materials. So that's probably one of the best performance indicators that we've gotten from this term and changing vendors was we've reduced the cost significantly to the students, and even for the administration and for the university, we've reduced those costs as well, as with EdMap, and those administrative fees like Nate was talking about that's been significantly reduced as well, from, even with giving a student this type of cost. So a couple of the other things, participation, and like I was talking earlier, discussing the opt-out, all of our students were given the option of opting out during the registration process. And so, I kept telling myself, okay, this is a new semester. This is a very new thing. If we have approximately 15% of our students opt out, then it'll be okay. That's what I kept telling myself for this first semester. But fortunately, we only had approximately 10% of our student population actually opt out of our resource fees and in the all-in model, I guess you could say. So I was really happy with that. I want that participation to increase as we move forward and into the summer semester, into the fall. Our hopes is that that increases to where maybe we're only at 5% opt out. But the 90% for a very first semester, in my opinion, is good, and I'm excited moving forward. Also, the ease of access. Like I was saying earlier, the efficiency of the new process has it's been so much easier for our student population, and we did a small survey of talking about the new process and what students liked, what students didn't, and 7 out of 10 of our students said that the new procedures were much easier, they were more convenient, they didn't have to worry about so many things. With this new process, it was really pretty much all given to them instead of them having to go search all this and do all the things. So I was really happy with that as well, to see that 7 out of the 10 said that it was easier. I definitely think that it's easier on a lot of different ways, but I was very happy to hear that from our students. And moving forward into the upcoming, semesters and definitely for our fall 2017 semester, one of the biggest things is an increased digital presence. So, for the winter 2017 term, we had approximately 50% of our course materials in a digital format. And I'm really wanting to bring that to 80% for our fall 2017 term. And the reason I really want that is because with publishers and with discounts, you can really tell a significant difference in comparison to a physical item being on a course compared to an electronic item. And I mean, it's a huge difference in that cost. And again, one of our biggest things for this change was the affordability aspect and really reducing those costs for our students. And I think moving to approximately 80% for our fall 2017 term, that's going to reduce the cost of course materials even more for our students, and and it's going to allow them to learn more, in my opinion, with the digital materials, because there's so many more things you can do with those digital materials in comparison to just a physical book. So I'm excited for an increase in digital presence, and I believe that our student population and our faculty and staff are as well. Also, we've discussed preferred publisher relationships. So instead of having 8 to 10 publisher contracts and having those contracted discounts and things like that with them, we're really looking at trying to reduce that to potentially 3 or 4 preferred publisher relationships. Because first of all, that still allows the academic freedom for our faculty and allowing them to find different course materials for their classes. But it also, with going to a preferred publisher relationship, it's going to allow us to get even better discounts, better deals for those course materials. And so that's, I've really been talking to our faculty and our program chairs and deans a lot about going to a preferred publisher relationship. Now, for some programs, that's not always going to be easy to do because they're very specific programs. But for a lot of our programs, it's a matter of looking at those preferred publishers and seeing what they have to offer, because tons of the larger publishers, they have tons of different resources and tons of different materials that can be used. So we're really looking at that moving towards to the fall 2017 semester. And the very last thing, which is again very crucial to me and very important, is the ongoing communication. I try to be at as many of the faculty meetings, the program chair and dean meetings as I possibly can to keep them updated on the changes with EdMap, or at the semester beginning, the following semester, making sure that they're aware of what's going on, and also listening to them and making sure that they know that I'm always here for them. So if they have any questions, if they're looking at course materials and they're thinking, well, I would like to move them to something else, or how much is this one costing us, Noah? I'm definitely there for them, and I'm communicating as much as I possibly can to keep them on board with all the changes that are going on. And the other thing is the students, trying to keep them within the communication circle as well, because again, of course, they're the most important aspect of this change, and making sure that they know all the things that we're trying to do, all of the changes that we're trying to make for a positive, and to really help them out. So keeping that, I would suggest having a student advocacy team when you're doing some type of implementation like this, because even if there's 10 students on that team, those 10 students can really start branching out and talking to all the other students about the positives of a change like this, and to really help the other students understand all of the changes that come along with this. So I think that's about it for me.
That's great. Thank you, Noah, for talking us through that and some of the results that you're seeing. So now that you all have seen, everyone on the line has seen some of the results, I want to go to one more poll. I want to get a sense of what you really think the strongest benefit is to an all-inclusive model similar to what Hodges University is operating with, like the AIM model. Just want to get a sense from the audience that, at your own institution, what do you think the biggest benefit of a program like this would be, for your institution? And we'll give it just a minute so everyone can respond. And I'll give it about 10 more seconds here. So if you haven't responded, please feel free to. All right, so we are at 63%, and so the results, very, very reflective of what we hear from other institutions that we're speaking with, frequently. So 80% say, student success improvements. So the students have their books on the first day of class. You don't have students showing up unprepared. They're ready to go and ready to start learning and participating. So definitely a benefit. And then, of course, student material cost savings, 20% said that. So something that's, very, very top of mind for a lot of institutions trying to save their students money with course materials. So for the next piece of our webinar today, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the market trends that we're seeing on a macro level now that Noah has talked about implementing the program and what they've seen at Hodges. I want to talk about the market, and then I'm also going to give an example of another institution that's a little bit different from Hodges University in this component of our presentation as well. So I showed this slide in the first presentation, but it's something that I wanted to come back to just because it really highlights the kind of dysfunction within the market that's there right now. And back in kind of the early days, and 40 years ago, you had publishers who or selling directly to independent or campus bookstores, and they'd mark it up a little bit and pass it on to students. And with that approach, things were, the prices were increasing steadily along with CPI. In the mid-'80s, you saw a rise of a wholesale market, so it kind of further pulled that publisher away from their end customer, which is essentially the student, and allowed that price to be kind of artificially inflated. In the 2000s, early 2000s, late 1990s, you saw the rise in online retailers. So you saw groups like Amazon and Chegg come on the scene, and again, they're providing discounts to students, but at the same time, the nature of the market itself is driving the cost up because you're still pulling those students away from the publisher. So as those prices increase, the really only market response for students is to not buy as many materials. So the College Board had a great study where they were looking at the average cost across the board for private nonprofit four-year institutions. They wanted to see, okay, what are students actually paying? And annually, they found students were, paying $1,249 a year for textbooks, so just over $600 a semester. So, the costs that Noah was talking about were well below that line. But, it's putting a lot of pressure on students. And it's also putting a lot of pressure on the colleges as a response to that. So 218% tuition increase since 1983. The response to market trends is slow. So students are looking for an affordable, aligned kind of digital solution for their materials. Student retention and recruiting are, extremely high priority. Going back to what we just talked about in that poll with the student success improvements. Students or going out and marketing to students and recruiting students is becoming more and more expensive every day. The population itself is shrinking, so all of the schools are essentially going after a larger piece of a shrinking pie. So retention, student success, making sure that you have strong outcomes in your programs are very important in not only recruiting new students, but retaining those students that you do have. And then, there's a much different kind of market response to colleges now than there used to be, where college leaders are now, under a much more intense pressure and scrutiny to justify the student costs that are being posted. And students are feeling this as well. It would take 28 hours on average for a student. That's how much they would work to purchase a full-price book. So, I mean, basically a week's worth of work. 1.5 billion was spent in financial aid on books per semester. And this is from a 2016 report from NBC News. So this was in 2016. 30% used financial aid for books. And so that's the thing, with this many students already using their financial aid for books, a program that is all-inclusive that allows that is really just kind of adjusting so that students can pay with what they're already using or what they want to use. And then again, this report also found that, similar to the College Board study, $800 to $1,400 per semester, per year for annual course materials expenses. So there was a study that was done by the Chronicle called "In Students' Minds, Textbooks Are Increasingly Optional Purchases." And when we first looked at the study, we thought, wow, okay, this is great. Students are using the market to find more affordable course materials, but when you dive into the data, what you see is while there has been a significant decrease in the total amount spent each semester, since 2007, almost $200. What we're finding is students are spending less and buying less. It's not that they're finding better deals and buying all of their course materials. They're only buying about 50% of the materials that they actually need for the upcoming semester. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about another institution that we work with. It's a private institution, approximately 35,000 students. And they came to us prior to 2014. They were relying primarily on used books and print content. And students were kind of on their own to acquire that content. So students would go out maybe to the campus bookstore or go out to Amazon, Chegg, really just kind of anywhere in the open market that they could find a good price on course materials. they were seeing a lot of issues, older versions of textbooks than what they preferred, but they were trying to save money for students, so they weren't going to the next version. They relied heavy on used to lower the costs, and again, you get into a problem there with editions and things like that. The vendor model commissions were impacted by the low-cost materials, so students were buying cheap, they were buying used, and the institution wasn't seeing any revenue back from those course materials. And then they had less than 5% digital availability, so something that Noah talked about, trying to move to that 80% mark. This particular institution was right around 5% digital availability. So they partnered with us to offer better content delivered in a better experience at a significantly lower cost to students. So the approach was pretty straightforward. There were three real areas they wanted to focus on. First being efficacy. Is the content relevant? Does it effectively teach the subject matter? Are learners actually using it? They wanted the experience to be better, so they wanted integrated content, aligned with discussions, assignments, assessments online, kind of the most direct path for students to get their content, access it, and use it within the course. And then, of course, affordability. Content aligned to competencies in the right size chunks. Look at OER, look at their current library, look at premium content. Really kind of build a content strategy around affordability. Around the students' needs overall. So the results we saw 2 years into the program, updated most of the courses with newer content, so that new edition or the older than they liked editions that was addressed. EPOD was enabled so that those students that might not be the best digital use case, they want that print book, they want that print material that they can have. They have that option with EPOD. Expanded use of the e-reader VitalSource. We have a partnership with VitalSource that is part of our integration, so that when we integrate with the learning management system, VitalSource is essentially attached to the learning management system so that students can access all that great content on the first day. Significant discounts with the AIM model, very similar to what Noah was talking about. And all students, all 35,000 students, will be digital first by July of this year. So they're now at 80% digital content. All of the students have all of their course materials on or before that first day of class. 51 programs have moved over to digital in an effort to save on costs and increase availability and access for students. And then, like I mentioned at the end there, 35,000 digital first students using the all-in model by July of this year. So now that you've had a sense of Hodges University and another institution that's a little bit different, a little bit larger, I want to do one last poll to see, and then we're going to move right into discussion on this. So I'm going to unmute everyone after I send this out. So, we'd love to hear, but I really want to see, what you feel the biggest challenge to implementing an all-inclusive solution, similar to what Hodges has done at your institution. Yeah, we don't have any responses yet, so feel free to chime in. And Noah, if you wouldn't mind taking a look, maybe you can get us started with the discussion. Just take a look at the lists and list there, and it might not be something there, might be something else, but just thinking back to when you were implementing the solution, what did you think the biggest challenge would be, and maybe were there any surprises to you there? And we have 57%, so I'm going to go ahead and close this. So pretty much a 50-50 split between faculty support and buy-in, and then of course financial issues and competing priorities, always an issue on campus, trying to figure out what project happens next. So I am going to go ahead and open the lines for everyone so that we can start, so everyone can start speaking and asking questions. So if you do have questions, feel free to type them in the chat window, or just you can go ahead and speak out loud, and I'll have everyone unmuted here in just a moment. But Noah, do you want to start us off?
Yes, from the result, my two biggest concerns, I guess, or the challenges, the number one was the faculty support and the buy-in for that. So I do agree with that one, just because we have some faculty that they really like having this complete freedom of everything, and they got to decide on everything for their classes. And so when I sort of came into the picture and said, okay, well, we need to start looking at some better ways to look at these course materials. Yes, you're still going to have your academic freedom. You're going to be able to go with the publisher that you really prefer. But we need to start looking at all of these different things, whether it be the electronic use of those, the digital use of those materials, or different things like that. So, like I said, at first, that was one of my scariest things. Was for me personally, I have never been on the faculty side of things. So it was to go and speak to them, to go and give them these details about this new change, about this new implementation. It was a little scary. I mean, also for me and for Hodges, it was the student buy-in as well. That was what I thought would be very challenging. And to be very honest, it has been a little challenging to make sure that all students are on board. You're never going to get every single student on board, of course, but to get the majority of them and for allow them to understand this process, those are two of the biggest things that that I found challenging.
Awesome. So what questions do you all have for Noah or for me? And Jason Fields is also on from the EdMap team, so feel free to give us your feedback, let us know what you think, and ask any questions you have. Okay, so I guess we don't have any questions. Is everyone sure? I'll give us just a moment. And you're unmuted, so if you have a question, you can just speak up. Okay. Well, I guess if there's no questions, we will go ahead and wrap up. But if you do have questions later, you can definitely email us. You'll get a survey response right after the webinar, just to rate the webinar and rate a little bit about what you learned and how you felt it went. And if there were any items that you wanted to know more about, you can definitely type them in there. You can also visit our website at edmap.com, or you can go to Hodges University's website to learn more about them. So thank you all very much for attending, and everyone have a great afternoon.
Thank you.